Her hands were shaking so hard the ring almost slipped off her finger. 12 people sat around that long mahogany table, forks frozen midair, and every single one of them was staring at her like she was something they'd scraped off their shoe. The chandelier above threw a cold light on the stone in her ring, and that's when she saw it, really saw it for the first time. It wasn't sparkling. It was dull. Plastic dull. Someone had switched her ring. Her mother-in-law's lips curved into the smallest, cruelest smile. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Did you really think our son would give a girl like you a real diamond?" The room laughed. Not loudly. Just enough. The kind of laugh that cuts deeper than screaming ever could. And her husband, the man who had promised to always stand beside her, just looked down at his plate and said nothing. But then, from the head of the table, a chair scraped back, slowly, deliberately. And what happened next silenced the entire room. If this story hits close to home for you, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps more people see stories like hers. And if you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people who were supposed to love you, stay with me, because this one's for you. Her name was Amelia. 6 months earlier, she'd been a florist working out of a tiny rented shop on the edge of town. She made just enough to cover rent and keep the lights on. No family money. No last name that opened doors. Just calloused hands and a habit of giving away her last flower arrangement to whoever looked saddest that day. She met Julian at a wedding she'd catered flowers for. He was the groom's cousin, standing off to the side, clearly bored of the whole affair. She handed him a spare boutonniere because his was crooked. He laughed for the first time all day. That was it. That was how it started. Julian's family had old money, real old money, estates, vineyards, a name that made headlines in business magazines. His grandfather, Whitmore, had built it all from nothing after the war, brick by brick, deal by deal. But the rest of the family had inherited the wealth without inheriting the man's spine. Amelia never chased the money. She used to tell Julian, half joking, "I'd love you in a one-bedroom apartment with no view." He used to laugh and say he believed her. But somewhere between the engagement party and this dinner, his laughter had gotten quieter. His silences had gotten longer. His mother, Eleanor, made her disapproval a full-time hobby. Amelia wasn't presentable enough. Her dress was sweet in a budget kind of way. Every comment wrapped in a compliment, every compliment sharpened into a blade. And Julian let it happen. Every time. Because the family fortune came with conditions, and those conditions came with rules about who you were allowed to marry. Real rules, written into a trust his grandfather controlled. Tonight was supposed to be the engagement dinner. The night Julian's family would finally, officially accept her. Instead, they'd taken her ring off her hand while she was in the powder room and returned it with a stone that wasn't hers. She didn't know it yet, but everything in that room was about to change, and not because of anything she would do. Because for 2 years, old Grandpa Whitmore had sat quietly at every family event, watching, saying almost nothing. Everyone assumed his silence was age catching up with him. They were wrong. He had seen the ring switch happen. He had seen his daughter-in-law's smile. He had seen his own grandson look away instead of standing up. And he had been waiting, patiently, deliberately, for the exact right moment to stop pretending he hadn't noticed a single thing. That moment was now. His chair scraped back again, louder this time. The room went still. Even Eleanor's smile faltered as the old man rose slowly to his feet, one hand pressed flat against the table, his eyes moving from his daughter-in-law to his grandson, and finally to Amelia. "Take that ring off," he said quietly. Amelia's stomach dropped. She thought for one terrible second that even he was turning against her. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box of his own. He set the velvet box down on the table with a soft click, that somehow felt louder than every word spoken that night. Nobody moved. "This ring," he said, still looking at Amelia, "belonged to my wife. I bought it with the first real money I ever made, back when I had nothing but a truck and a promise to build something better. I was going to give it to whichever grandchild married someone who reminded me of her." He turned, slowly, to face his daughter-in-law. "Eleanor, sit down." She hadn't even realized she'd stood halfway up. She sank back into her chair, face pale. "I know about the ring," Grandpa Whitmore said. "I know you had it swapped this afternoon. I know because I watched you do it through the hallway mirror." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "And I know something else, too. Something none of you wanted me to find out." He looked at his son, Julian's father, and something in the man's face crumbled. "The estate accounts are short," Whitmore said. "Almost 2 million short. Money that was supposed to be sitting safely in the family trust has been quietly moved, spent, and covered up for the better part of 3 years. Vacations. Renovations. Nobody needed. A lifestyle built on a foundation that was never really there." Ghosts moved around the table like a wave. Eleanor's hand flew to her chest. Julian stared at his father, stunned. "So please," Whitmore continued, voice steady as stone, "tell me again how this girl isn't good enough for this family. Because from where I'm sitting, she's the only person in this room who's never lied to me." He turned to Julian next, and this time his voice softened, not with forgiveness, but with disappointment. "You watched them humiliate her tonight. And you said nothing. Get up." Julian rose slowly, like his legs didn't quite belong to him. "A man who won't defend the woman he loves in a room full of strangers," Whitmore said, "doesn't deserve to keep her." He let that sentence sit in the silence for a long moment. "I hope for your sake you find the courage to be better than what I saw tonight." Then he walked around the table, picked up the velvet box, and opened it in front of Amelia. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, unmistakably real. "This," he said gently, "is yours. Not because you're marrying into this family, because of who you are, regardless of whether you do." But he wasn't finished. From his other pocket, he pulled out a folded document and placed it beside the box. "This is the deed to the original estate. The first property I ever bought, before any of the rest of it. It's not tied to the trust. It's not tied to any conditions. It's mine to give, and I'm giving it to you." Amelia's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back all night. "I don't need your money," she whispered. "I never did." "I know," Whitmore said, smiling for the first time all evening. "That's exactly why you deserve it." In the weeks that followed, the family didn't fall apart, but it didn't stay the same either. Eleanor, stripped of the illusion she'd spent years maintaining, quietly began attending family meetings with something she'd never shown before: humility. Julian's father worked out a plan to repay what had been taken, one honest year at a time. It wasn't forgiveness overnight, but it was a start. Julian, for his part, finally understood what silence had cost him. He didn't win Amelia back with grand gestures. He won back a fraction of her trust slowly, by finally standing up in rooms where it mattered, even the small ones. And Amelia never did chase the money, the title, or the approval of people who once looked down on her. She kept her flower shop. She kept her calloused hands. She just added one more thing to her life: the quiet certainty that her worth was never something anyone else got to decide. If this story moved you even a little, you already know exactly what it feels like to be underestimated by people who should have loved you better. Comment: "I see her worth," if you believe real value was never about the price tag in the first place. And if someone in your life needs to hear this today, maybe it's time you shared it with them.